I'm on a mission to find the greatest game ever made. So welcome to the series where we do just that. As someone who plays a lot of games, I always get hit with the same impossible question. What's your favorite game? And honestly, my answer changes every single time I answer. And I don't really finish a lot of games that I play. I mean, probably 90% of the games I start, I don't actually finish. I have the attention span of a fermented kidney bean and it's bad. But this series is going to be my way of fixing that. I'm going to play and actually finish some of the most beloved games in all of gaming, as well as some games that I've just always wanted to try or that I've started and not actually finished. I'm going to break each game down into 4 core elements that I think make up a great game. And those are the visuals or the art direction, the narrative slash storytelling slash writing slash characters, the overall enjoyment of the game, and the gameplay itself. Each category I'm going to give it a score out of 10, and at the end we're going to add everything up and get a final score out of 40 and ask the big question, is this the greatest game ever made? I will also be keeping a running leaderboard so we can see throughout this series kind of where each game ranks in terms of my favorite or what I think are the greatest games ever made. And as you can probably tell, this is the first entry in this series for me. So if this is something that you're into, if you want to join this journey and watch me discover what I think the greatest game of all time is, click that subscribe button, like and comment what games I should play next. What games do you think are the greatest of all time? Give me 1, 2, 3, give me 20. I don't care. I'm going to put them all in a spreadsheet so that I know what I want to play. I already got a starting spreadsheet. There's like 40 games on there. It's going to be a long ride, so if you're into that and want to stick around, join the journey. It's going to be fun. And one quick thing before we start, these videos will contain spoilers. I'm going to be talking about the major story points, character arcs, big moments, all the things that if you want to go in blind, you might want to click off this video. Or just put it on mute so the YouTube algorithm thinks you're watching it. Anyways, if you got all that, thank you. And let's get into it. Is God of War 2018 the best game of all time? Before we jump into the visuals, I want to explain what I mean by visuals. So graphics are obviously important, right? But I'm not going to be judging games off of pure pixel count. Like, Half-Life 2 and Elden Ring will get a pretty similar score on a graphical level because both games were equally impressive when they came out. You know what I mean? And retro 16-bit games can absolutely get a 10 in visuals if the art direction is appealing enough, right? I'm more looking at the art direction, the style, the atmosphere, the vibe of the world that the developers have created, rather than pure GPU flexing. You know what I mean? So with all that out of the way, God of War 2018 looks amazing. Like really, really good. It's kind of the top of the line that you'd expect for a PlayStation exclusive that came out in 2018. And yeah, it's not mind-blowing by today's standards, but it definitely holds up. It's clean, it's polished, and it runs really well. I had almost no visual bugs. There was maybe 1 or 2 times where I did a finishing move and it clipped through a wall and I was stomping the air like a lunatic, but that was really rare. So pretty much from a visual fluidity standpoint, it was nearly seamless. And I was running it on an RTX 5050 on standard mode, so kind of getting the base experience that you'd get if you were playing this at home. But the art direction, right? The art direction was the big standout here. The game nails this feeling of grandeur, like the feeling that you're a god in a world that's somehow even bigger than you, is something that really stuck with me during and after I played this game. The scale that this game inflicts on you is insane. The first time you see the world serpent, see it coil around the whole lake and talk and move, that really slapped me in the face with whoa, this is big. Like, this is a big budget game. Like, it felt impactful, right? And that's kind of the word that I kept on going back to while writing this. This game, it feels impactful, and that's because of these massive visual cinematic experiences that happen throughout the game. Everything from a massive fight with a dragon who's tearing off the side of a mountain to just sailing around the Lake of Nine looking up at the massive ancient statues, it all just feels so much bigger than you. And that's a crazy feeling to have when you are playing as a literal god. Like, that is an impressive feat in its own from the visual standpoint. So for visuals, I'm going to give God of War 2018 a 8.7 out of 10. That is a very strong score to start things off. The game still holds up in 2025. Some of the set pieces are genuinely breathtaking, and I wasn't gonna give it this high of a score until I sat down, thought about it, and started writing, and just realized how many moments stuck with me from this game. So visuals, 8.7 out of 10, a really great score to start it off. Alright, in this section I'm covering the narrative, but also the characters, the writing, the voice acting, the lore, all of these kind of things that make up what this world gives you from a more, narrative direction, I guess. This is the part of the video that will have most of the major spoilers in it, so I will put a timestamp on the screen right now. And if you want to skip ahead and you don't want any of the major story points, you can skip there to just when I talk about my final score, and I won't spoil anything for you. God of War 2018 puts you in the shoes of an older, more worn down and world-weary Kratos that's now a dad, a settled down, not as, rash and powerful as he maybe once was, but he's working with his son to scatter the ashes of his wife, and to do that, they need to travel to the highest peak in all of the realms. Now, I'll be honest, this father-son dynamic had me worried at first. I mean, how often do you play a game where you have to listen to two characters constantly yap at each other for the whole game and it doesn't get annoying? Like, not very often, right? I was quite worried that I was going to be pretty sick and tired of the constant dialogue, but honestly, and I don't know how, this game doesn't only make it tolerable, it makes it one of the best features in all of the game from a storytelling standpoint. It adds so much humor, so much depth, and it adds a lot of character arc that you wouldn't normally get just from cutscenes, right? I talked a little bit about humor there, and this game is actually really funny. That's one thing that shocked me. I was not expecting to laugh out loud on multiple occasions like I did while playing this game. There was one part specifically that genuinely made me laugh, and that was when you were in Alfheim. You were trying to solve this puzzle without Atreus' help, and he kept on chirping you and telling you should just give up and it's too hard and you're not smart enough. And Kratos just snaps at him with a, "Shut up, boy, let me focus." And it was hilarious. I loved that part. And there was a bunch of those little parts scattered around where it was just like, it was just funny. It kind of took the tension off, because this game, it's emotional and it's heavy, but those parts really lightened it up and they worked really well. It was delivered great. Atreus, in general, as a character, really surprised me. His character arc felt real. He went from this helpless little boy to a cocky young god to someone who could actually stand on his own rather than be in his dad's shadow. The journey up the mountain to scatter your wife's ashes was kind of just a backdrop to the main point of the game, which was the relationship between father and son. This was the part of the game that really carried a lot of the emotional weight. It really helped the story progress. You went from, at the beginning, when Kratos was still grumpy and didn't seem like he really even liked his own kid, to them trying to figure out how to work together and how to be, a good duo, to the end where you could feel that they genuinely loved each other. And that was the real story for me. It wasn't as much about the journey, it was more about the character development and how they evolved as people to become ones who could actually work together. Along the way, you meet some fantastic side characters. Most notably for me were Brock and Sindri, the two dwarf brothers who upgrade your gear. And they're always chirping each other, and it's one of the best moments in the game. Whenever I saw one of their shops set up, I always had to go to talk to them. And the two of them are complete opposites. You have Sindri, who's this germaphobe, really put together dwarf who's completely different from everything you've seen in fantasy as far as dwarves go. And then you have Brock, who's the more classic, angry blacksmith dwarf who hates everything and everyone if it isn't a sharp blade, right? And the two of these work so well, you don't really see them together. You don't see them at all together until the very end of the game. But they're always chirping each other. They're always, harassing each other to you. Like they're telling you about their problems with each other. And then at the end of the game, they come together and they're working together and it's all nice and it's wholesome, right? Like these two characters were great. Some of my favorites in the entire game. Along the way, you also meet the Witch of the Woods, who you later realize is Freya, the goddess Freya. And she is very powerful, and she has incredible healing abilities, and she plays a major role in the story. She ends up being, as you find out near the end of the game, the mother of the main antagonist, Balder, who is Odin's son. So she was married to Odin, they had a son who is Balder, and he's the main antagonist that's been antagonizing you for the entire game. The final confrontation between Balder, Kratos, and Freya was incredibly emotional. This was the final boss battle in the game, I believe, if I remember correctly. I think I do. But this battle was so heavy. Like, you have Kratos wailing on Balder and Freya just begging you to stop, even if it means that Balder is going to kill her instead. It was a part that made me kind of think, like, is this the right thing to do? Like, I've hated this guy for the whole game. He's been harassing us and annoying us for, like, 17 hours now. Do I really want to kill him, though? It really made me think, and that was a big part of the story, one of the key moments of the story that stood out for me, for sure. But let's go back a bit, and to the moment when you meet Mimir. This was when the story really clicked for me. Mimir is the smartest man in the world who is also unfortunately stuck in a tree. And when you meet him, he tells you that you have to cut his head off, and that Odin trapped him in this tree with a curse, and the only way to get him out is to cut his head off, bring him to Freya, and get her to reanimate him. And as he's explaining all this, Kratos just goes, I'm gonna cut your head off now. And then Mimir is like, yep, fair enough. And that was another part that was really funny.
So you value your privacy more than your son, eh?
I'm going to cut off your head now.
Fair enough.
I just thought I'd point that out. Love that part, love that little piece of dialogue. And when Mimir joins your party, he sits on your hip, it's just his head, and he just talks. You'd think that's when it would get annoying, right? You'd think that, okay, there was 2 characters, they pulled that off, there's no way they can do 3. They're constantly talking to each other, there's barely a moment of silence. You'd think that's when it would get annoying. But no, it gets even better, and that's the crazy part. I don't understand how they do it. This is probably one of the more impressive feats of writing in a game I've ever seen. I don't know if I've ever played a game where there is this much dialogue and it doesn't get stale or unnecessary. Everything that is being said adds something. It all is either funny, it adds lore, or it adds to the overall character arcs that these characters all have. Kratos' internal struggles are a big emotional core of the game. He's struggling with the fact that he's a god. He doesn't want to be a god. He doesn't want to tell anyone he's a god, and he especially doesn't want Atreus to find out that he's a god. And this part was kind of confusing at first. I didn't really understand why. Probably because I've never played the older God of War games. But as the story developed, and especially after you met Mimir, it really started to make sense. Kratos was a very angry, rash character in the original God of War and earlier on in his life, who ended up killing his father out of pure anger. And this is actually something that you see happen over and over again in the game's lore. You see Freya trying to get killed by Balder at one point, and then that happens again in real time. And it seems like this is some sort of prophecy that every god ends up killing their father. And Kratos is kind of just acting out of fear in this whole story. He doesn't want Atreus to find out that he killed his own father. He doesn't want Atreus to become cocky and powerful. And he's just scared of showing Atreus what he used to be. And he doesn't want Atreus to become that kind of god, right? The whole journey and the whole plot progression around Kratos is about accepting your power without letting it overwhelm you and take over your overall conscience, right? And that's a really powerful and emotional kind of story to tell. Now, with all that said, I do have one big issue with the story, and that's that I finished it in just 17 hours. This game easily has another 20 hours in it of just exploration and boss fights and encounters and stuff, and I don't love that. It felt kind of like the game stopped right when it opened up. I love the idea of post-game content. You know, it's great when games add something extra on top of what you paid for, but here it kind of feels like they took stuff out just to have a longer post-game. And I'm someone who, once I finish a game story, I don't really have much of an incentive to keep exploring because a plot progression is kind of what keeps me motivated. If I don't have a story to work towards, then I'm not really inclined to explore. I'm not really inclined to get any better gear. Like, I don't really care because I've done what the game asked of me, and the whole reason I wanted to get strong enough was so that I could beat the game. That's how I think about it in my head. I know a lot of people are different, and this game is definitely tailored towards people who want to keep playing it after the story. And honestly, you can see that. When the story wraps up and the credits roll, it's while you're walking in the world. Like, it doesn't stop, have a credit screen, and then take you back to the title screen. It just continues, and Atreus is talking while the credits are rolling, and it definitely feels like the game doesn't want you to stop playing just because the story's over. But for me, I wish that we got a little bit more of Alfheim in the main story. I wish that Jotunheim was a bit more explorable. I wish that maybe one or two of the realms that opened up in the post-game were just put into the main story. All of these things would have added, 5-10 extra hours that would have made me feel like the story was a bit more fleshed out. And I don't know, it just felt a bit short. It was a good story while it lasted, but it kind of just left me wanting a bit more. So for those reasons, I'm going to have to give the story, characters, narrative, all those things, a 7.8 out of 10. Alright, this is the segment where I fully expect people to start typing hate comments, but honesty is honesty, and I did not love the combat. I did not love the gameplay in general. And look, it starts off incredible. It feels great when you're finally learning the combos and you're unlocking new skills. Atreus is stunning enemies and you're just bulldozing your way through them. Especially when you get to Alfheim and the enemies are completely different from what you fought in the first 5 hours of the game. It was great. Up until that kind of 7 to 10 hour mark where the cracks really started to show. And for me, those cracks, what I'm talking about is the lack of finishing animations and the lack of enemy variety. Let's talk about the finishing animations. This part really, it hit me first and it hit me hard. You can be fighting 7 to 10 enemies in an epic battle and then see the same animation play out over and over again. And it's just, it takes a lot of the enjoyment out of this epic combat that you have in the actual minute to minute kind of thing when you see the same animation, over and over again. And if you look at the animations themselves, they're great, right? Especially when you are fighting a troll. When you jump on its back and you're riding it around like some deranged Uber driver, smashing your way through all the other enemies that are around, it feels awesome. And then there's some trolls that carry a big boulder. You take the boulder and you smash it on its head. It looks great. Just not when you've seen it 10 times in the past hour, you know what I mean? It just kind of felt stale, pretty quickly, and it really took a lot out of the combat for me personally. And the other part was, as I talked about before, the enemy variety. As I said, when you go from Midgard to Alfheim for the first time, it's great. The enemies look different, they play different, and some of the boss battles in Alfheim are amazing. But when you leave Alfheim and the rest of the game, it doesn't really develop from there. After Alfheim, I was like, oh my god, what are the other realms going to have? If that one was so different and so cool, what's Helheim going to be like? What's Jotunheim going to be like? But you never really see much of that difference again. And Helheim, as I just talked about, was the biggest example of this. It's built up to be this crazy, dangerous realm of the dead, and you get there, and you're just fighting pretty much Draugrs and Nightmares wearing Halloween costumes, right? They aren't called Draugrs, but they pretty much play exactly like them. Some of them have a shield, and they resist ice damage. It's really not that interesting to me, and it really took the combat down at least half a mark in my ranking system. The part that really broke me for the enemy variety and the overall combat was when you get to the Bridge Keeper. This isn't the first time you're in Alfheim, and this enemy is hyped up, right? Freya tells you that it's gonna be tough, you know? It's a big challenge. You even have to go get the Blades of Chaos from your house. And those are some of the most iconic weapons in video game history. You're swinging them around on chains, fire's going everywhere, it looks epic. And then you get to this boss battle against the Bridge Keeper, who is supposed to be this, you know, the keeper of the bridge that allows people into the afterlife. It should be some huge, grotesque, monstrous creature that, you know, scares you, something that you've never seen before. It's just another troll, though. You get to it, and it's the same enemy that you've seen over and over again, just a little bit bigger, and he has horns, which I think the other ones don't, but either way, he has a pretty similar moveset, and the only gimmick really is that he vanishes and teleports, which for me is more of an annoying gimmick than something that's actually different and cool. I think teleportation and disappearing is overplayed in boss fights. I don't love it. And yeah, this part really stuck with me as a down moment. But the worst part about all of it was when you finish this boss battle, when you finally defeat him, he has the exact same finishing animation as every other troll that's carrying a boulder in the game. You climb up on him, smash the boulder on top of his head. And it's insane to me how this was the final boss of Helheim, the place that's supposed to be the most dangerous realm in all the 9 realms, as far as what you've heard so far, right? I watched this play out and just sat back in my chair and was like, there's no way that's the end of it. Like, that was my reaction, and I don't know. I didn't love it. I thought that part brought it down another 0.5 for me. To be fair though, there are some standout moments. The game does really well when it leans on heavy cinematic, you know, experiences for boss fights. I think those boss fights that are more cinematic than, you know, normal combat are a lot better. Like the dragon fight when you're going up the mountain. He's like tearing off the side of the mountain. You're jumping from cliff to cliff and it looks great. Or when you're fighting Baldur on the back of a dragon that's flying. You know, these kind of boss fights were the best, but that was more down to the cinematic spectacle than the depth of the melee combat. The melee combat doesn't really evolve past what you do in the first 10 hours, other than, you know, upgrading your gear. You get some different moves, I guess, but the enemies don't really change enough, and it just doesn't really feel like something that it was gearing up to be in the first 10 hours. The minute-to-minute combat is fun. Atreus learns some summons that, you know, makes, you know, wolf ghosts go around the battlefield, and it all looks good, it feels good. If you were to put me in this game for an hour and give me all the enemies in the game to fight a couple times, I would have a great time. Like, I would be like, oh, I gotta play this game, I gotta see what else is out there. And then I would get into it and realize, oh, I could have just played for an hour and now I get what the combat is. Like, I've seen everything, right? It doesn't do enough, in my opinion. So my final gameplay score is going to be a 6.8 out of 10. And that's purely just due to the lack of finishing moves, the lack of enemy variety, and the fact that the game felt kind of stale after the first 10 hours or so. The latter half of the game was not nearly as strong as the first half in terms of gameplay. Alright, now let's talk about something that's equally as important as graphics and gameplay and story, and that's the enjoyment. You know, the fun factor, how fun this game actually is. And for me, God of War 2018 is better than the sum of its parts. Even if there was times when I felt like I was fighting the same enemy for an hour straight, it was the narrative, the world, the story, the atmosphere that kind of drove me forward and made this game pretty amazing, in my opinion. There was something really satisfying about the puzzles. You know, they weren't complicated, but they were fun. Exploring Midgard with Atreus, that constant chatter, that constant dialogue, that you really never felt, you know, lonely. And when you did, the game really made you feel lonely because it took out the constant dialogue that was in it. All of these parts added up to a game that was pretty damn amazing in my opinion. The pacing, something that I didn't talk about already, was great. Every time the game felt familiar, it added something. It added a piece of lore, a massive creature, or just a big story moment that hit you emotionally, and I never really felt bored for too long. Honestly, every time I put this game down, I was ready to jump back in next time I had the chance, and that says a lot. By the time the credits rolled, I was invested in the characters, the lore, the world, and honestly, this is the first game in a while that I might actually go back to after finishing the main story, which is something that I cannot say for 99% of the games that I actually complete. My overall enjoyment, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. A very strong experience that delivers more on spectacle and storytelling than raw gameplay, but I think it worked really well. So that was God of War 2018. A great game, just dragged down by a few things that could have made it a perfect game. And if we add all these scores up, we get a 31.3 out of 40. So is this the best game ever made? That's the question you're all here for, right? Well, by default, yes, this is the best game ever made because this is the first episode of this series. So God of War 2018 sits at the top of the leaderboard. And I'll put that on the screen for you all to see, and you'll see that we only have one entry. So let me know what game I should go at next. I'm playing Halo Reach right now again, so that might be the next one, we'll see. But I would love to hear what you guys think I should tackle. I'm trying to do as many games as possible. I want this list to fill up, and I want you guys to follow along for the journey. This is going to be a long journey. It's probably going to be the main series on my channel, and I'm going to try to do as many videos as I possibly can in as short of a time as I possibly can. But I'm a busy man, so we'll see how quickly I can get them out. I'm hoping at least once a month, hopefully 2. But yeah, if you enjoyed this, I've been Janky. You know, stay tuned for all the latest gaming news, controversies, and discussions. I also do news on the channel once a week. Usually comes out on Monday. So if you're into that, check those out as well, and leave a like and comment. Thanks for watching. I've been Janky, and I'll catch you in the next one.